this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. How did our eyes get so red? And what the hell is on Joey's head? This is where I grew up. I think the president who fixed it up. I never knew we ever went without. The second floor is hot for sneaking out. And this is where I went to school. Most of the time I had better things to do. Criminal record says I've broken twice. I must have done it half a dozen times. I wonder if it's too late. Should I go back and try to graduate? Life's better now than it was back then. If I was them, I wouldn't let me in.
Hi, I'm Rita Heller, and this is the Heller and Zeitman family album. This is me and my son and my cousin. I had a stone inscribed at the Los Angeles Holocaust Museum with all the names of the murdered in my family. These are my grandparents and my aunt that were murdered. And these are their sons that were murdered. And I added here a little note that they were murdered by the Nazis my grandparents, in addition to 4 sons who were pictured here. I'm reading upside down. They lived in Bolshevsky. It was Poland at the time, but now it's the Ukraine. That was the Heller family. This is the Zeitman family. This is a pre-war photo. And this is a pre-war photo. This is my father, Aaron Heller. This is my mother, Bulma. And this is their wedding invitation. My father was a printer. They got married in Lampertheim, which was a DP camp in Germany. And I don't believe they had any Hebrew type available, because I know he would have used it if he could have, because he wrote letters using the Hebrew alphabet. He wrote letters in Yiddish, so I know he would have, because this is transliterated Yiddish written with regular English letters. So this is kind of interesting. You might want to look at that, Saul.
What is your name?
Isaac Hirschbein. I don't have a lot of stuff from the war. This is just a picture of my parents. Many of you know them. And they are, I didn't have my glasses. They're signing the Book of Remembrance in Washington, D.C., 1983. I don't know who was there of the group. And their birth certificate, I'm sorry. Can you try this? Cute? Yeah.
Works, okay.
Works. Their marriage certificate from Germany, Fürstenfeldbruck, which was a suburb of Munich, 1947. When was that marriage? February of 1947. I was born in June of 1947. So do the math.
Diane Strum. I didn't have anything that my parents left anything. But what I have is a book, the story of my parents. And I compiled it. We did it in 2010. And it's a story of them in the Holocaust, and it contains a lot of photographs and documents, and it takes it through the beginning of the war to they're coming to San Diego.
What is your name?
Esther Katz.
And there's a couple ways I could tell different stories about this. Here's a book cover, a book I made on Apple after I went to Auschwitz. And on the end here is a woman with a full head of hair, and then there's all these other people with shaved heads that are already in Auschwitz. And the woman with all the hair is my mother getting off the train from Budapest to Auschwitz. And how I came upon this picture is, there was a background story about all these pictures from the Yad Vashem, is that someone found a German officer's coat, and they put it on. And in the coat was all this film, and it was of all these atrocities that happened during the war. And so this person, probably a Jew, kept all this film for, I don't know, 40 years or whatever, before they turned it over to the Yad Vashem in 1982, I believe. So on there was not only this photo, but all those pictures that we all see on newsreels and everything else of these concentration camp pictures with people behind wire and looking like skeletons and everything else are in the Yad Vashem, and we see them all the time. So anyhow, one day, one of my friends sent me a whole newsreel of them. And so when I got it, like how I am, I send everything to my siblings. So one day I sent the whole package to all my brothers and sisters, and one of my brothers calls me up later on that day, "Sir, do you have a minute?" And I was startled. "Yes, why, is something the matter?" And he said, "No," he says, "Can you go to your computer?" And I said, "Yeah." And so he had me scroll through till we got to this particular picture. And he said, "What do you see?" And as soon as I saw it, I said, "That looks like Mom." And he started crying, and he goes, "I was wondering how you didn't see that." And as soon as I saw it, I thought, "That's Mom."
Henry what?
Henry's 8, and we don't have much. My aunt went into hiding after the war, and she ended up in Russia. And 30 years later, I don't know exactly when. My aunt was in Israel, and she brought this dish right here that she got from their house in Czechoslovakia. She, after being in hiding, there's a few different stories, I'm not sure which one is correct. Anyway, somehow she got back to the house and she got this dish. And this picture is that's my grandparents on my mother's side. And this picture here is my father, that he brought his uniform to Sweden and took this picture, and then he probably didn't want to have anything to do with it, so it never came back. We don't have.
Okay, I'm Jan Landau, and I'm the daughter-in-law of survivors Max and Elka Landau. So this is a photo of Max and Elka, and it was taken by my parents on their visit to San Diego in 1972. And it's actually thanks to Max being skilled as a printer that saved his life during the Holocaust. He had become ill when the Russian army cutting down when he was in the Russian army, he was cutting down trees in below freezing weather in the Ural Mountains. He went to see a doctor who asked if he had a skill, and he told him he was a printer, and the doctor arranged for him to meet a manager of a printing place who eventually hired him. He later learned that everyone in his unit had been killed. His first
Arlene Keys.
And I'm David Simberg.
Well, I brought this menorah because it represents the happiness that our family shared before our dad passed away. And so I just want to say my father was in Dachau, my mother was in 2 slave labor camps. My dad was also in the Russian army. This picture was taken at Izzy Flom's bar mitzvah. And it's a very cute picture of them, and I love it.
My claim to fame is I'm Marlene's brother. That's how I'm known. So anyways, these are tefillin if you don't already know. And my dad, who was probably called to the Torah at some point after he became bar mitzvah, his name was Nehemiah ben Pinchas David. I'm David, okay. These are probably about 87 years old from the time that he got them in, I think, 1936. They're very, very, and very worn.
Hi, my name is Marty Stern. This is a book that a resident up in Heritage Point did of my mother. And she was very interested in her story. And she's got all sorts of photos. Supposedly information is true. My mother, after she got the book, the woman printed up like 5 copies of this book. And it's very nice, it's, color, and my mother's looking through it. Her first words were, in the inimitable by way my mother did things, "She got it wrong." And my wife sat down with her and said, what did you get wrong? Well, she said, I grew up in this town that was near the Carpathian Mountains. It was in the Carpathian Mountains.
I'm Sonia Fox-Olbaum,
Joe Fox.
and we have several things, but probably the most important is my dad's uniform. My father was in 4 different concentration camps. The last camp he was in was Buchenwald, and he was sent on a death march, and he escaped.
Dachau.
Yeah, he was on his way to Dachau, and he escaped. There's a very lengthy story. He went to prison or jail and all this kind of stuff, but the short story that I usually tell when we teach is that he made his way, he escaped, he saw somebody else run, and so he ran. He made his way to a village, found a farmhouse, and in the farmhouse, he was going to knock on the door, but thought it could be Nazi sympathizers, so he made his way to the barn. And he hid in the barn, was discovered by Alex, the farmhand, and Alex was, as we say to our students, an upstander. He fed my dad and his dad until the war was over, and so that's why we have Dad's uniform. He
escaped in April of 1945.
And one little thing that's kind of unique about the uniform is that he made a hole in the inner part of the jacket, and he had found a spoon, and that spoon to him was so precious that he didn't want to put it in one of the outer pockets. And he said that with that spoon, when they got their ration of soup, he would go away where the guards didn't quite see him, and he'd pull out a spoon. He said it was the one time during the day that he felt like a normal human being and he could eat with some dignity. So my mother did wash the uniform, and the pants fell apart, so we do have the cap. And I do encourage you to touch it, to think that this is what he wore for 5 years, slept in it, worked in it the whole bit. So, and then I have a picture of Dad before the war, 19. And always, when I look at it, he always used to say, "See how handsome I was?" And then what he did.
Yeah.
And then this was post-war at the age of 26. So it was already time had passed, and he had this photograph taken in his uniform. So, and just a couple of the things that I brought to share is we received this brown book. You know about the brown book? That my father's uncle had smuggled it to Switzerland, and so he was able to keep this, Uncle Abe, yeah. And the brown book, published in Paris in August 1933, was a publication written by anti-fascists on the conditions of the Jewish population, which greatly raised awareness about the Jews of Germany. So it was letting people know what was going on.
It's all in Yiddish.
It's Hebrew.
Hebrew?
Oh, not Hebrew, sorry, it's in German.
German, sorry.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So my dad's cousin, Max Fuchs, was able to leave Germany as a child and went to England, lived in London, and he became a tool and die maker. And he made this Hanukkah, and Hannah and I, my wife and I, got the label put on it at an award shop made by Max Fuchs in Offenbach, Germany, 1957. So he went back to Germany afterwards.
1937.
37,
Yeah.
that's when he left, sorry.
Yeah.
didn't have my glasses.
Yeah. So that's really special for our family. When my parents were in Frankfurt, where Joe was born, they were being sponsored, obviously by very distant family members. And Dad got letters back from somebody from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and from Buffalo, New York. And he was going around, because the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was Philly, PA. So he would say to everybody, should I go to Pilipa or Buffalo? And they said, we don't know where Pilipa is. You better go to Buffalo. So we wound up in Buffalo.
So my father was in, the camps that he was in were labor camps. And the last one he was in was Buchenwald, and he was on a death march to Dachau, and he escaped, and Sonia told you about the story of him hiding in the barn. After he was liberated, he purchased this gold ring, and it's heavy, and in it it's inscribed Vom KZ Befreit am 15/4/1945 Buchenwald, and that translates to mean freed from Camp Buchenwald, April 15, 1945.
What is my name? Judy Gottschalk. So I'm here because I have a lot of things, but I brought these jewels, these beautiful necklaces, and this ring. And before that, my grandfather, who was a doctor, taken a lot of the jewels, a watch, money, put it in a metal box and buried it under the toilet in the bathroom. And the day the war was over in Budapest, his cousin, they got a wagon, and they pulled the wagon from Budapest to Rakosliget, which is, let's say, like walking from La Jolla to La Mesa. And they did it, and they dug up this box, and I don't know what else they took, but they dug the box up. This beautiful, these are 2 necklaces were in there, a watch, we call it like a pocket watch. My brother has it, some coins, some other jewels. This ring right here, which if you've been to my home, you've seen my fantastic oil paintings of my grandparents, and my grandmother is wearing this ring.
State your name.
Solomon Pincheski. It's amazing how much we have in common. With regard to my history, I actually have a book which really tells it like it is. And there are numerous things, like many other people have said. And the interesting thing is that while listening to Sonia and Joe, I came to realize that my dad, who escaped from Buchenwald, he was on that same march. He hid out a farmhouse also. So it's a similar story. And, it's amazing how much we have in common.
What is your name?
I am Esther Jacobs Hope, and many of you have been to my home and seen this picture. And it is the most precious picture for me and my sister and my cousins. And there's my father, and there's the 2 uncles and my grandfather, who passed away. He survived the war, and then he passed away when I was about a year old. They are all wearing Jewish stars. The significance of this photograph is that it was taken when they were in hiding, a few months after the Nazis surprised them and came banging on the door. The men hid because the men believed that only men were being taken to work.
Hi, I'm Karen Levinson, and this is a picture of my great-grandmother. Her name was Baila Kanzapol Vogel. She was born in 1870 in Poland. My grandfather, Israel Vogel, was her first son. She had another son named Salma Vogel, who later moved to Palestine. My family lived with my grandparents, my mother's parents, since I was born. My grandfather spoke so often about his mother that I felt as if I'd known her. His picture always hung above his bed, and he spoke to her every morning. We treasured my grandparents and continue to treasure their legacy, as well as this picture that now hangs in my bedroom.
My children also realize what a special picture this has always been. There's a picture of my family taken still in Germany, holding this picture. That's how precious she was to them. And then the cousin's son that moved to Israel came to visit me in San Diego maybe 6-7 years ago. And we did the same thing, took a family photo with my great-grandmother. This picture of my great-grandmother is a valuable connection to my family's history, and we all appreciate its significance. It's amazing how one picture can hold so much history and emotion.
I'm Sandy Scheller, and there's some things I just don't take off. Okay, I'm not going to take them off. Is that my grandmother's teeth were in the dress that she wore when she was in Auschwitz, and I have that dress. I didn't bring it today, and Sonia and I are very lucky that we have the male and I have the female. And the reason that I have a dress with the X and the line that goes down and not a uniform is because when they ran out of uniforms, you took a piece of clothing from the dead. And when my grandmother picked up this piece of clothing, it didn't have buttons, because if you swallowed the buttons, you'd commit suicide, right? You didn't want to do that. They wanted to kill you. And so what happened is I was with my mom one day, and I took the dress, and I wished it like out, and these things come flying out of there. And they're my grandmother's teeth. They're her gold caps. And I'm like, Mom, what the hell am I going to do with these? And she says, well, they're gold. You know, we all have that attitude. And it's just like, Mom, you don't understand. What am I supposed to do with this? And my mother's like, I just wanted to hear my mother say, it's yours. You do whatever you want. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen right away. And it was a little vial. And I sat there and I was like, I hope I hear those words. Well, the words finally came. You can do whatever you want with them. I'm like, all right, sounds good. So I was in Las Vegas because I worked in Las Vegas. That's another story. And I met a jeweler. It turns out it's the same jeweler as Nicolas Cage. And when I went into this jeweler shop, I said, what do I do with the teeth? And he goes, oh, you're kidding me. I said, yeah, what do I do with these? Because they were the caps. And I don't know if any of you know, I don't want to take up too much time, Mr. Camera, but I am a board member and I manage an opera house in Death Valley. And on the opera house, we have a happy face and a sad face on the doors. And I have been associated with this opera house since 1994. So when I went to the jeweler, I said, these are my mom's teeth, or my grandmother's teeth. And when I came back, this is what I got. So it's a ring. And as you can see, you can flip it. It's got a happy face and a sad face. So right now it's on the happy and the sad. And I turn it and I flip it.
What is your name?
I'm Sam Landau. I also wrote some things down. So when we talk about legacies, we usually talk about things, tangible things that we can touch and see and smell, like books or candlesticks, pottery, jewelry, recipes, specific foods even, and so on. And that's what we've been showing a little bit today. But I don't have many tangible things. I have this ring from from my mother. But I don't know if this is from Europe or she got it here or if it has any value or anything or not. But it's a memory. It's something that keeps reminding me of her. And some, legacy items can be very expensive in monetary value, or perhaps more values, the mementos with little dollar value that we have. But for me, the greatest legacy items are not the tangible ones. For me, it's the values that one's character, understanding, and outlooks of life. My mother, Elka, and she rests in peace, was probably the nicest, sweetest, kindest person you ever could meet. And aside from being an excellent baker, and many of you probably had some of her chocolate chip cookies and remember them, I think that's the only reason I had friends, is that people would come over and have their chocolate chip cookies.
Let's play football.
Her family owned a bakery in Buchach, Poland. She had a heart of gold. Although quiet in demeanor, she taught me tolerance, patience. I don't know if Jan agrees with that. But always trying to look for the best things in people and trying to help those in need. And she also taught me about a strong belief in God. And while I don't have those qualities yet, I'm doing my best to try to maintain them. The legacies from my dad, may he rest in peace, I certainly got his height. And that's just a product of nature. So.
His longevity.
Oh, thank you. He was 104 when he passed away. And still had all his marbles. Really, he was quicker than me. He instilled in me a sense of persistence, determination, and the need to accomplish goals. Also, a strong sense of responsibility, the responsibility of caring for a family, and a deep sense of also belief in God. Again, these things that I've seen in him, and the behaviors and attitudes, I'm still striving for as well to try to maintain in some way. I do have a few pictures that I'd like to share with you. Some pictures of before the war and then slightly after, so if you want to look at these later. This is a picture of my dad in his army uniform. I think Jan mentioned a little bit, he was in the Russian army, also the Polish army.
Which one is he?
Which one is he? Can anybody find him? The short one, yeah, thank you. Right there.
Thank you.
And these are maybe some of the boys who didn't come back. And this is a picture of my mother and her brother and sister. They're only survivors of their family after the war. You can take a look at this as well, if you'd like. And one more. This is a collage, pretty much. But the main thing is there's a picture of my dad with his two brothers and his parents, obviously taken when he was a teen. And that's him right there. So you can see the land that we with family in those days. Thank you.
I know the one thing that would never change. Every memory of looking out the back door. I have a photo of us written on my bedroom floor. It's hard to say it, time to say it. Goodbye, goodbye. Every memory of walking out the front door. I found the photo of the friend that I was looking for. It's hard to say it, time to say it. Goodbye, goodbye. Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh.